Human slays 300 monsters to protect twins. A mother's priceless gratitude. Commander Stephen Rice's boots echoed through the narrow, gleaming corridor of the alien vessel, each step deliberate and measured. His gray composite armor, designed for both function and intimidation, reflected the subtle lighting of the ship's halls, its silver accents catching the glow of distant stars. At 6'4" and built like a tank, Stephen was a towering presence, even among the tall, graceful Virillians. His short, dark chestnut hair flicked rebelliously, a tuft sticking out like it had its own mind. His deep brown eyes scanned every corner of the ship with a veteran's instinct, seeking out threats that didn't yet exist. Today wasn't about fighting, it was about diplomacy. But with Stephen's reputation for toughness, the message was clear. Earth was a force to be reckoned with, and they weren't coming to negotiate from a place of weakness. His role as Earth's military attaché to the Virillian Trade Confederation was supposed to be a quiet, peaceful affair. He would show strength without needing to draw a weapon. The politicians would do the talking, while he stood as the quiet, imposing figure behind them. "Commander Rice, the High Counselor will see you now," Terrace, his Virillian liaison, announced. Her turquoise skin shimmered as she led him down the hallway, her voice soft but urgent. Stephen nodded and straightened his posture. "Lead the way," he said, his voice calm but with an edge that hinted at the intensity beneath. The doors to the grand chamber slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a massive room. The walls were adorned with intricate alien carvings, and floor-to-ceiling viewports displayed the vast expanse of space outside. There, standing at the center, was High Counselor Adara Nixian. She was a vision of elegance, her snow-white hair cascading down her back like a waterfall of silk, her turquoise skin glowing with an otherworldly light. Her large amethyst eyes locked onto Stephen, studying him with quiet curiosity. "Commander Rice, Earth sends its warriors even for peace talks. How characteristically human." Stephen bowed slightly, his face serious but his tone respectful. "High Counselor, we find that strength is often the best way to avoid conflict." Adara's lips twitched into the faintest of smiles. "A philosophy I can respect." Before Stephen could respond, the ship's alarms blared to life, cutting through the calm. Proximity alert, unknown vessels approaching. The High Counselor's calm demeanor immediately shifted to one of alert. "We're under attack. Get to the escape pods," she commanded, her voice steady despite the sudden chaos unfolding around them. The ship shook violently as explosions rattled the walls and the lights flickered. The peaceful trade talks had turned into a desperate fight for survival. As Virillian guards scrambled into position, Stephen's heart raced, but his training kicked in. There was no time for hesitation. The twins, the High Counselor's daughters, were his first priority now. The diplomatic mission had just become a battlefield, and Stephen wasn't about to let anyone, least of all children, fall prey to the violence that was about to unfold. The heart of the storm. The moment the alarm screamed through the corridors, Stephen's senses sharpened, his focus narrowing to the chaos unfolding around him. The ship trembled under the force of impact, each explosion shattering the walls and rattling the floor beneath his boots. He didn't need to hear the blaring sirens to know what was happening. The raiders were here. With a swift, practiced motion, he unclipped his pulse pistol and checked the charge. Not much left. It wouldn't be enough if things went sideways, but it was all he had for now. "Stay close," Stephen ordered, his voice a low growl as he turned to High Counselor Adara. Her calm composure in the face of disaster only reinforced her leadership, but she wasn't about to stay behind while the ship burned. "Take the twins to safety," she commanded, already moving toward the nearest hallway that led to the escape pods. The girls, Lena and Fina, clung to her like lifelines, their small hands gripping her gown with a desperation that tugged at Stephen's chest. "Where do we go?" Lena's voice broke through the tension, tiny and full of fear, but her eyes were still bright with hope. Stephen's gaze snapped to the twins. "I'll get you to safety,"
he assured them, his voice softer now, despite the pounding in his chest. He knew the ship better than anyone. They had one chance to escape, and it was going to be dangerous. The halls outside the grand chamber were flooded with chaos. Virillian guards shouted orders, their weapons drawn, while terrified crew members ran past, scrambling for escape routes. Stephen pushed forward, leading the way with steady, sure steps, keeping the twins close behind him. But then, the far wall of the corridor exploded outward with a deafening roar. Shards of metal and debris flew in all directions, and Stephen's heart skipped a beat as he shielded the twins with his body, dropping to the ground as a shockwave rattled through the hall. Through the dust and smoke, figures emerged, horrific, insectoid creatures with glowing eyes and jagged mandibles, Drex raiders. The first few were quick to charge. The Virillian guards fought valiantly, but they were overwhelmed, swarmed under the sheer ferocity of the attackers. Stephen's pulse pistol roared to life, the sharp crack of each shot cutting through the air as he dropped 3 raiders in quick succession. But they were too many. "Commander!" Adara's voice broke through the firestorm, calm and commanding as ever. "The escape pods, Deck 7, she shouted, even as the raiders drew closer. As the ship shuddered violently under more impacts, Stephen knew they had to move fast. He grabbed the twins, one under each arm, and surged forward, pushing past the chaos. He had no time to think, only to act. But just as they neared the corridor leading to the escape pods, the lights flickered, and a second explosion tore through the ship. The hallway ahead was blocked by debris, rubble falling like a storm of metal, sealing off their path. "Hold on tight," Stephen said, his voice low and commanding as he scanned for a new way out. He wasn't about to lose them, not now. The nearest alternative was a maintenance shaft, narrow, dark, and cramped, but it was their only chance. With a swift kick, he sent the access panel flying open, revealing the narrow tunnel within. He squeezed the twins inside, then followed, sealing the hatch just as the sound of Drex's claws scraping against metal echoed behind them. The battle raged on above them, but Stephen didn't stop. Every step brought them closer to safety. At least he hoped so. The narrow maintenance shaft felt like the inside of a steel tube, claustrophobic and endless. The dim emergency lights flickered above, casting eerie shadows that seemed to stretch out in all directions. Every noise echoed off the cold metallic walls, amplifying the tension as Stephen, Lena, and Fina crawled forward, the sounds of battle still faintly audible through the thick ship's hull. Stephen kept his head low, feeling the weight of the pulse pistol at his side, though the energy was running low. His senses were razor sharp. He was hyper-aware of every shift in the air, every scuff of boots on metal. He couldn't afford to let his guard down, not for a second. The Drex were relentless, and the ship was sinking fast. "How much further?" Lena's voice cracked through the quiet, her tiny voice full of fear, yet laced with determination. "Not far," Stephen reassured her, though the words felt hollow even to him. The escape pods were on Deck 7, but the journey was growing more dangerous with every passing moment. Stephen's mind raced as they crawled through the cramped tunnel. The twins were resilient, but there was no denying the fear in their eyes. They were children, and the universe had thrown them into a storm they couldn't yet comprehend. And Stephen, he was their protector, whether they understood it or not. But the weight of that responsibility felt heavier than it had ever before. As they rounded another bend, a sharp noise broke the silence. The sound of claws scraping against metal, closer now. "Stay close," Stephen muttered, his voice a low growl as he instantly drew his backup weapon, a sleek, compact energy blade, now glowing faintly at the hilt. They reached a junction in the maintenance shaft. Ahead, the passageway split. One direction led further towards Deck 7, the other took them to a maintenance room with a panel that might let them bypass the damaged sections of the ship. But there wasn't time to think. Behind them, the sounds of movement grew louder. The Drex were already here, hunting them down like prey. "Quick," Stephen hissed, shoving the twins towards the left. His fingers danced across the access panel, trying to bypass the lockdown. His heart pounded as sweat trickled down his forehead. The ship trembled again. More explosions, more destruction. The Drekks were closing in, and every second was a countdown. The door to the maintenance room slid open with a hiss. "In here, now!" Stephen urged, pulling the twins inside just as the unexpected click of alien claws echoed down the shaft. The air seemed to freeze for a moment. He could feel them, closer, just on the other side. But just as quickly, he slammed the door behind them, a temporary barrier between them and the relentless attackers. The room was small, filled with pipes and wires, yet it was their only hope of getting through. Stephen scanned the space, looking for anything that could help them move faster. Anything.
His senses screamed at him to be alert, but as the twins settled down, Stephen allowed himself a moment of quiet. He unslung his rifle from his back, checked its charge, and took a seat nearby, his back pressed against the cool stone of the alcove. His gaze never strayed far from the twins. They had come through one battle, but another was surely on the horizon. The quiet would not last. And then, just as the last light of day began to fade, a sound cut through the stillness, something familiar but distant. Engines. Hope flickered in Stephen's chest, but the sound was far off, too far to be a rescue ship. Something else was coming, and he wasn't about to trust it just yet. Adara's voice echoed in his mind. Keep them safe, no matter what. And he would, but first he needed answers. The calm before the storm wouldn't last long, and the next battle would be one they couldn't afford to lose. As the stars began to emerge in the alien sky above, Stephen tightened his grip on his energy blade. The twins' lives and his own survival depended on what came next. The hunt, it seemed, was far from over. The gathering storm. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a cold silver light over the jungle. Stephen stood at the edge of the alcove, his silhouette a dark shadow against the glow of the distant stars. The night had fallen swiftly, and with it a sense of dread crept in. The air felt thick, like the world itself was holding its breath. Every rustle in the trees, every shift in the wind, sent a surge of tension through his body. His eyes scanned the jungle, but it was impossible to know what waited just beyond the reach of the shadows. "Stay close," Stephen muttered to the twins as they crouched near the back of the alcove. The twins, Lena and Fina, clung together, their eyes wide with uncertainty, but they followed his instructions without question. They had learned quickly that there was no room for hesitation here. Survival meant staying alert and staying quiet. Stephen's mind raced as he listened to the distant hum of engines. The sound was getting louder, but it was still too far away to know its source. Was it a rescue ship, or was it something else, something more dangerous? His instincts told him it was the latter. The world had already shown him too many monsters to let his guard down now. A sudden snap of branches echoed through the underbrush, and Stephen's muscles tensed. He whipped his head toward the sound, pulse pistol in hand, his body moving into a defensive stance. Every fiber of his being screamed that they were being hunted. But who, and what exactly were they up against this time? His hand hovered over the pulse pistol's grip, ready to fire. But then, nothing. The sounds faded, swallowed by the night. A breath caught in his chest, but he didn't lower his weapon. If anything, the silence felt worse than the noise. It was then that he noticed the faintest flicker of light through the trees, a figure moving swiftly but cautiously through the foliage. A Varillian figure. Adara. Relief hit him like a wave, but it was quickly followed by a sharp edge of dread. If she was here, that meant the situation had escalated. She and her guards had come looking for the twins, or had they come for him? The jungle seemed to hold its breath as she appeared, stepping into the narrow opening of the alcove. Her combat armor, sleek and fitted to her form, shimmered in the moonlight. She looked every bit the leader she was, calm, composed, and yet there was a visible edge of urgency in her eyes that spoke of the danger pressing in around them. "Commander Rice,
You and the twins are safe for now, but we can't stay here long." Stephen nodded, his jaw tight. "I've been hearing the engines. Are we getting out of here?" Adara's gaze flickered toward the jungle behind them, and for a moment, Stephen saw a flicker of something raw in her eyes, a fear she was working hard to suppress. "We are, but we won't make it far if we don't move quickly. Lord Vex's forces are close, and they'll have no mercy." The words hit Stephen like a punch to the gut. Vex. He had known the threat was real, but now it was more than a whisper in the dark. It was imminent. "Can we make it to the ship?" Stephen asked, his thoughts already calculating the safest path. His military training had always been about adapting, reacting, and surviving, but this was different. Adara had her own stakes in this, her daughters, her legacy. "No," she said softly, her eyes locking on his. "Without more help." Stephen's heart sank as he realized the weight of her words. There was no guarantee that they would make it out of this jungle alive. He had been tasked with keeping the twins safe, but he hadn't prepared himself for this level of danger. Not like this. But there was no time to doubt. They would survive. He couldn't afford to fail, not when everything had already been put on the line. "I'll get them to safety," he said, his voice low but firm. He stepped toward Adara, determination setting his features. "You lead. I'll follow." A faint, appreciative smile curved her lips. "Good. Stay close. We don't have time to waste." With a final glance back at the twins, who were clinging to each other, their eyes wide with fear, Stephen stilled himself. They had come this far, now they would survive, whatever it took. The jungle closed in behind them as they moved forward. The predators were waiting, the raiders were closing in, but for Stephen, there was no turning back now. The storm had come, and they would face it head on. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon for more amazing videos.